One of the most common questions that I get asked each spring is, do I have to empty my containers every year? The simple answer is no. No, you do not. This week on the channel, I'm going to be focusing in on containers. This video is going to be all about what to do with your containers in spring. And then the next video is going to be making the right container selection and planting up seasonal containers. Now, to help you guys out, I've made a springtime playlist. I've left a link in the description box below. And in that playlist, I cover how to refresh your compost, what is mulching, and lots of other springtime care and tips and tricks to help you make the most of your garden through spring. Okay, let's head out onto the balcony garden. My balcony garden is 18 floors up, so just imagine the struggle I would have carrying up all that compost. Now, there's a slight myth that you have to change your compost in your containers every year, but that is simply not true. Depending on the brand of compost that you use for your containers, you should be able to get at least 2 to 3 years of nutrients in that container. But today I'm going to show you a technique to extend that process. Briefly, I'm going to show you what to do if you have an annual container, and then I'm going to show you what to do if you've got containers with perennials. So down here, this was a fern. This, I think, has gone completely kaput. And then, ooh, you see, look at all of this wildlife. Again, this is why it's so important to try to not move your containers, because you'll end up disturbing some of the wildlife that you do have here. This garden never ceases to amaze me. Anyway, let me continue. So this container here housed some cosmos. So let me just take this. So first things first, what I would do here is I would collect some of these seeds. Then I would remove the plant like this, de-weed it. Okay, so now that this container is empty, what I would do is then add this to my compost refresher container. If you check out the springtime playlist that I mentioned earlier on, it will show you exactly what to do with this leftover compost. As for the leftover plant waste, I won't be throwing this away. You can chop this up and use this as a mulch. If you're not sure what mulch is, once again, you will find a whole video about mulch and how it can help you save water and also improve the soil quality for the plants in your container. Now, believe it or not, this was one of my favorite containers last year, but she's looking a little bit worse for wear. This is my peony, and it's a Sarah Bernard peony. I did have some annuals in here with the peony, and the container just looked so awesome. I don't even think I've got pictures of it. Now, as we look a little bit closer, it tells a different story. There are actually quite a few buds coming up, which means this plant is alive, and it is going to flower. So, the first thing I'm going to do is just tidy up a little bit. I'm gonna get rid of this leaf litter here. It comes off really easily, and that should give us a better look at the plant. I'm then gonna clear these annuals out from the container. Let's get this out. And whilst I'm here, I'm gonna do a bit of weeding. Now again, you have to be really careful, because as I look over here, you can see that this is a spider's nest. And I know that we can be a little bit scared of creepy crawlies, but just bear in mind, spiders are actually really beneficial in the garden. They will help to maintain the balance. I found spiders on here taking care of pests for me, which reduces the amount that I have to be out here trying to manage the pest situation. So I don't want to get rid of the spider completely, but it looks like she is not home. How much better does this container look now? Pruning should improve airflow and will also allow a little bit more sunlight to hit these buds which should get them kick-started. One of the biggest differences between ground level gardening and container gardening is that in a ground level garden, plants have more access to natural resources. This allows them to grow big and strong. However, a container garden might not have the same level of access to microorganisms and insects that could break down useful nutrients. As a container gardener, it's our job to restore that balance as best as we could. Let me show you an easy way to do that. Okay, now that I've cleared the surface, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in some natural fertilizers. So now what I have here is some worm castings, which is basically worm poop, and this stuff is packed with lots of nutrients that the plant will use. So I'm just going to go ahead and sprinkle some of this on the surface here. You can use gloves if you prefer. And then to help with flowering, I'm going to use some of this fish bone and blood. Now, child, let me tell you, no one talks about this, but this stuff stinks. It stinks. Ugh. But it is super effective. So again, I'm just going to sprinkle some of this around. Over time, the soil can get a bit compacted, which will suffocate the roots. So it's important to rake the surface of the soil to allow for more aeration. And then the final step is I've got some fresh compost that I'm just going to add in right on top. There you go. And now your container is ready for spring. One thing I would just caution you on is to make sure that you leave a lip here on your containers, because if I'd fill that right to the very top, when you go to water, it will just cascade right off the side. So you want to make sure that there is at least a 1 centimeter, 2 centimeter dip here so that the water stays in the container. In this extra layer of compost, you've got some fresh new nutrients, and then you've got the added nutrients, the worm casting and the fish blood and bone. And then the final step is to add in one of your liquid fertilizers. Now I'm using this organic compost booster from Plant Grow. Then pour this in and water the container thoroughly. Just remember, if you are going to water, make sure you're watering thoroughly so the water reaches all the way down to the bottom of the container. We can get pretty lazy as container gardeners when it comes to watering. If you want to be really bougie, in this container, I'm going to be using straw as a layer of mulch. This will help to suppress the weeds, but will also help to keep moisture in the container. And over time, the straw will break down and add to the nutrients in this container. But in this particular container, this one had a heuchera in it. And as you can see, the heuchera has come out quite easily. Now I can see some new growth in here, so these were gladioli. Why these guys are coming up right now, I don't know, but they have chosen to. And you can see that on the salvia, there's lots of fresh new growth coming up. In fact, all over the plant, you can see all of this new growth. However, because I didn't cut it back last year, I think it needs a bit of a hack back, because the fresh growth is coming up here. It is going up to the top, but I think I'll just neaten it up, chop back half of this old growth so that I can have all of this fresh growth for this year. And if you have a look, these leaves here are from the gladioli from last year, so we'll dig up some of that. However, because this has got vine weevils in it, what I need to do is treat this container. Now, to treat vine weevils, you can get some nematodes, which are essentially, think about it like little parasites that will kill the grubs in that container. There's no point going through this whole process trying to refresh this container without sorting out the vine weevils first. Nematodes need the temperature to be around about 10 degrees and up, and we are just about to go back into a cold snap. So I'm going to wait for the cold snap to be over, then apply the nematodes, and then I'll come back and refresh that particular container. One thing to be particularly aware of is if you have a container that was riddled and infested with pests, like aphids for example, be aware that the aphids may leave some eggs in the compost or on the underside of leaves. You believe that the infestation was really heavy, it might be a case that in this particular container you start all over again with fresh compost. The pests like vine weevils and potato beetles may also leave their grubs in your containers, and they will overwinter, ready to re-emerge in spring. Now in this container I have a different set of pests. This container had whiteflies. So what I'm going to do here is chop back all of this old growth, and you can see the Nepeta is coming through really well. And with this old growth, I'm going to chop it back and immediately discard this and put this in the bin so that it doesn't reinfect this container. I'm going to weed this, get rid of all of this, and then I'm going to mulch it. And this one, I'm most likely going to use the fish blood and bone in here as well. After a little bit of hard graft, you can see the difference between this container, what it was like before and what it's like now. And even the salvia in the back has started to put on some new growth, which I couldn't see before. A fresh layer of compost acts as a mulch as well, so if you don't have any other forms of mulch, don't worry about it. Now just look at this other container. Now that I've chopped it back, you can see what a huge difference that's made. And this plant should hopefully come back even stronger this year. Now the task is to make my way all the way down the garden and repeat this whole process. This is the part of balcony and container gardening that is not fun. Anyway, I hope that this video has been useful. If it has, let me know in the comments below, and hopefully I will see you all again very soon. Bye.